Hello everyone, this is part 39 of What If Naruto Had a Hug That Changed Everything, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Be sure to like and subscribe, it gives me more motivation. Enjoy. Now that's some good s, he growled with a cheeky grin. Well, I see that each of you are as eager as I am to get started. So, let us begin, shall we? Hold it, Jiraiya interjected. The red-haired monster stopped himself from attacking. What is it? He said rather irritantly. Not here. If you're so eager to get even with us, then you may as well allow us to take you to an area of our choosing, the Toad Sage suggested. At first, Kuro was silent, but then he grinned. HRMMM. You drive a hard bargain, Jiraiya-kun. But I suppose I can be patient for a few more moments. Where did you have in mind? He asked as he adjusted the shackle upon his wrists. Since it took Tsunade a couple of seconds to catch on, she immediately shifted her eyes to her side and noticed several terrified watchers, trembling in fear of what they were seeing. Leading him away from the innocent Smart move, the blonde thought before refocusing at the issue at hand. Gaining nods of recognition from both of his old teammates, Jiraiya and the rest of the Sannin vanished in a flash, with Kuro repeating this action. Sakura, Ino and Sasuke were laid out on the ground of Training Area 7, panting and sweating like crazy from physical and chakra exhaustion. When Sasuke told Sakura about what had happened when he left to find Naruto, she really took it to heart and agreed with Sasuke about the training front, so much so, that she let Ino in on the little charade, can't remember how to spell it. That, of course, was yesterday. Now it is early in the morning. Catching his breath first, Sasuke used his elbows to lift and HLD himself upon the ground. He gandered at both of Ino and Sakura's faces at that moment. He remembered Ino's ultra-worried reaction when Sakura had told her what had been happening and instantly agreed to start training with both of them. To be frank, Sasuke was amazed with everything that had been happening in his life as of late. So much so that he actually started to laugh to himself. The irony was just too much. The laughter was not missed by the ladies of this little group, so they turned to the chuckling Uchiha. Sasuke-kun, Sakura said, what's the matter? The raven-haired genin could still only laugh to himself. SAs. Don't you see it? The irony, Sasuke said suddenly. This gained him skeptical look from both lass. The Uchiha let his elbows give way and he plopped right back down. Oh, don't play me. You both love the hell out of that guy, don't you? He sharply suggested. At this, Ino blushed big time. She knew exactly what Sasuke was talking about because it involved Sakura, who merely smiled. What are you talking abo? It's okay, Ino. It isn't that hard to figure out, Sakura said, perfectly relaxed. Unfortunately for Ino, uneasiness was creeping inside of her. How long have you known Sasuke-kun? She asked before biting down on her thumb. I didn't have a clue until I saw your reaction to the news that I gave Sakura last night. To think that it was only a few weeks ago that you were. Sasuke was cut off by another fur of his own laughter. Sakura could only smile more as a light and modest blush actually crossed her face. She didn't have much to worry about. Ino, on the other hand, was starting to freak out for some reason. A reason that she wouldn't openly admit to because of how bad it sounded. The pink-haired Kunoichi did not miss this. What's wrong, Ino? You look like you've seen a ghost, she said with a nudge on the arm to get her attention. The bleach blonde female could only retain silence as she laid there, frozen. Since Sasuke wasn't slow to this kind of thing, he rose to his feet and stretched out his limbs before turning around to leave. I'll see you both later, he said before slipping his hands in his pocket and walking away. Surprisingly, neither Ino nor Sakura noticed him jumping up and clicking his heels together in triumph. He was finally free from all of his fangirls. Anyway, since both ladies were alone, they decided to sit upright and talk now that their first session of training was over. Then again, there wasn't that much to talk about, not that they could find anything, what with the distractions and all. Both of their faces were intense and focused. The level of intent on each of their faces could shake the will of even the toughest man. You know, Sakura, I never noticed how good you look when you glisten, Ino said before harboring a naughty smile. Sakura fell silent as her close friend had taken the words right out of her mouth. Sadly for her, Ino was a little less revealing than she was, so she couldn't see that much of her, but she was digging 'em legs though. Ino, on the other hand, was heavily enjoying the view. Ever since Sakura's change in style, and her recent blossom of desire for her, the turquoise-eyed Yamanaka often fantasized what it would be like to see that body wet and glistening. Look at them now. Ino trailed her vision up and down Sakura's smooth legs before looking up into her deep jade-green eyes, noticing that they were already fixated upon hers. The sparks of a different kind of tension exploded, and sure enough, they were both unable to stop themselves from lunging at each other and sharing their lips in a hungry make-out session. Deep within a lush forest, the three Sannin were swiftly hopping through the trees, keeping their focus sharp and their senses opened. They had been traveling for roughly 2 hours already, and to be blunt, the cross-armed Kuro was starting to grow a little impatient as he followed them without blowing his stack and going on a mindless rampage. But that doesn't mean he liked it. The scowl on Kuro's face had been hard and scathing for some time now. Mostly because the moment he noticed the change in the air and scenery, he started to question where his old enemies were leading him. Hey, Jiraiya-kun, where in the soaring hell are we going? We've been traveling for hours, the devil growled. The white-haired Sannin didn't even look back at Kuro as he answered, "It's not much further now," was all he said. The red-haired man simply snorted and summoned another ounce of his patience before closing his eyes as they traveled to this unknown location. Tsunade looked back at Kuro and frowned. Damn it, he's getting impatient, the slug tamer thought before looking at Jiraiya. Just where are we going, Jiraiya? I hate it when you do like this. Minutes passed by, and they were still traveling. Kuro shot his eyes open, flashing a demonic red. Don't you think you've kept me waiting long enough? I've had it with all of this meaningless traveling. Where are we going? He demanded this time. There were many things that Kuro could stand given his life of experience, many of which any human would avoid at all costs, even the most hardcore of warriors. However, being ignored was definitely not one of those things. That just pissed him off. With a frightening growl of animosity, Kuro vanished out of sight before reappearing right in the Sannin's path with his arms still crossed. That does it. This is as far as we go. 20 years I've waited for this day, and I'd be damned if I waited a minute longer. It's time to put up or shut up, Kuro demanded with that eerie glow to his eyes never leaving. The three shinobi legends stopped in their tracks and realized that Kuro meant business. That look in his eyes only reminded them how impossible he is when he gets like this. Any more reasoning for here on out would be utterly pointless, and Jiraiya knew it. That, of course, only made him a little more uneasy. Well, I can only hope that we've staved far enough away from innocent people. This is gonna get messy, Jiraiya thought to himself before nodding with affirmation. With that, he and his fellow Sannin made one final mad dash ahead before bursting out of the forest and into a vastly large and open grassy plain. Kuro smiled dastardly before repeating this action. Orochimaru, Tsunade and Jiraiya all landed silently upon the ground and watched as the hulking form of their enemy jutted out of the trees and landed upon the ground about 15 feet away from them all, his mass crushing the earth around him. So here we are. Kuro and the Sannin on the battlefield once more. Doesn't it excite you? Now you shall know the full extent of my wrath, a treat that none of you have been able to truly experience, Kuro chuckled evilly. Tsunade slammed her fist into her palm. I think you've been talking long enough, you freak, she snarked. 20 years from then and you still think you're invincible. Now that's sad, Jiraiya concurred. Kuro made a mock flinch. Ooh. Someone's asking for it up the ass, he said, looking directly at Tsunade. The blonde female clenched her teeth and her fists. He's paying for that, she inwardly growled. Well, I think that's enough talk now, Sannin. It's time we continue where we left off, Kuro said before closing his eyes for only a few moments. Then, with one massive grunt, the black-hearted monster's chakra pulsed a tremendous flux of power, tiespling the heat with the area and practically reducing the ground into mush. All three Sannin flinched with surprise before dashing off in separate positions to surround Kuro. Doing just that, they readied themselves for what the destruction incarnate had to offer after all these years as the fiend himself lifted his chakra levels. In time, black energy swirled about his being, engulfing him with the flames of darkness. A vicious teethy grin tugged at his face as his eyes glowed brighter than before and his strength grew. The current that Kuro gave off was enough to drive all three of them to an edge that they've not felt in years, neither of them. Now they had no lingering doubt in their minds that the time of redemption was now. HMHMHMHMHMHMHMM. Kuro cackled before breaking his small accession and charging at the first thing he saw. Orochimaru. Meanwhile, at Konoha, Neji Hyuga raced quickly to a destination that him and his team had agreed to meet at after a certain investigation. It was no surprise to anyone how keen Neji was to anything and damn near everything around him, and the fact that he was being kept in the dark about what's been going on lately was starting to get him a little irritated and not to mention, concerned. His mind raced as his legs did. Within no time at all, Neji had arrived at the western sector of Konoha. He took cover within one of the empty buildings and laid low until he was signaled by Tenten from behind. Neji, were you able to get anything this time? She asked. No. I'm beginning to think that there's something that they're not telling us and it begins in this sector of the village, the Hyuga said. Both Tenten and Neji considered the fact that their sensei had been acting a little strange as of late. But not just him. All of the Jonin have seemed to be a little on edge. Of course, they first deduced that it was because they were almost completely destroyed by Suna and Oto. But given the certain circumstances and strange phenomena recently, they concluded that their troubles were a little deeper. And the current location seemed to have something to do with it. Well, it doesn't matter now. The important thing is that we take this situation in our own hands and start investigating this sector of the village, Neji said. Right. We'd better stay alert though. If the Jonin's strange behavior is any indication, then that means we might be in for a few surprises, Tenten concurred. Neji closed his eyes. All the more reason for us to get to the bottom of this dilemma, he said. With a nod from both of them, Team Guy, minus Lee, vanished from the current area and reappeared upon the roof of that very same building. Remaining as silent as possible, they observed. First things first. Byakugan, Neji grunted before his famous Keki Genkai was activated. Not too far off from them. Asuma Sarutobi and Miyato Guy were leaning against the wall of a sturdy building observing Neji and Tenten. Asuma grimaced at what he was seeing. If I'm not terribly mistaken, you said that your students' snooping habits would be kept under wraps. Now look, he said with slight disdain. Guy lowered his head. No, you heard me right. But this shouldn't be much of a surprise. This was bound to happen sooner or later, he said. Asuma took a quick drag of his cigarette. Yeah. We were all aware of that prospect, but we can't allow any of it to slip into the public until the village's Godime is instated, he stated. The green-clad Jonin looked up into the sky and let his eyes wander upon the blue sky above. Well, it'll be one heck of blessing when Tsunade-sama does get here. If there's anything that I'm sure of, it's her knowledge and experience with that devil. She'll know what to do, Guy said with lifted spirits. Let's hope you're right, Asuma said before he and his fellow Jonin started their walk toward the central building. In the meantime, are you gonna let your students snoop around a bit more or what? It'd be the best course of action to take at this point. If I tried to stop them now, they'd only get more and more suspicious, the bowl cut enthusiast said. What about yours? Asuma scoffed. Have I ever told you how hard it is to keep secrets from a genius with a 300-point IQ? He asked with a silk grimace. He didn't find out anything, did he? I don't think so. Although he doesn't usually tell me what's on his mind, the bearded man added. MRRRAAAAAAAAAAAAH, Kuro roared as he came plummeting down to earth with a fist of might raised. Anticipating the assault, the prepared Orochimaru flung his arms forward and launched several brown snakes toward his oppressor. As expected, Kuro's body was bombarded with the serpents as they coiled around him and proceeded to constrict. The instant this happened, however, the snakes were suddenly vaporized by a flash of blood-red energy made by a cackling Kuro. With his snakes destroyed, Orochimaru retracted them and prepared to relieve his grass-cutter blade. Before he gave his enemy a chance to act, Kuro immediately spun his body like a drill as he descended, nearly colliding with Orochimaru before he rolled out of the way. Recovering with pure ease, The pale-skinned Sanin managed to pull his blade out of his tea and fall into a readied fighting stance, glaring death at the monster of Konoha. Smiling eagerly, Kuro opted to lead the initial charge until out of nowhere, his chest was impaled by a goddamn fist, splattering his blood upon the ground he stood. Letting out a choked gasp of surprise with an equally surprised look on, Kuro's face immediately fell into that of irritation as he snapped his vision to the fist that was lodged through him, reached behind his back, grabbed the forearm the fist was attached to and yanked himself forward before thrusting back and elbowing the attacker straight into the abdomen. Throwing his foe over his shoulder, the red-haired fiend saw none other than a sneering Tsunade, who recovered from her little tumble and landed promptly upon the ground beside Orochimaru. Sensing danger, Kuro immediately backflipped off of the ground and timingly avoided a Yomi Numa no Jutsu, swamp of the underworld. The second he landed on the ground, the evil warrior took his trusty katana and slashed the air behind him, creating a massively powerful wave of pure energy that nearly hit Jiraiya directly. Fortunately, the Toad Sanin vanished and avoided the assaulted before reappearing beside his fellow Sanin. Kuro smirked, I see you're all choosing your steps wisely. Good, he said with silent delight as he reshethed his sly katana. Well, let's hope that you do the same thing, old foe. We wouldn't end this monumental brawl before it starts just because of your stupidity now, would we? Jiraiya retorted. Now Jiraiya, don't tempt the poor thing. After being trapped in that rock for 2 decades, he might still need to warm up. Baby steps, remember, Tsunade added. With a twitch to the eye, Kuro growled, you pathetic curs. You'll pay for those remarks, he threatened before vanishing into thin air. Thus, the battle continued. Haruno household. Ino, wait, Sakura huffed through her friend's fierce and intensely pleasurable ministrations as she was pinned onto the bed of her room. Wondering what could have possessed the pink-haired vixen to demand such an absurd thing caused Ino to cease her assault and stare at the female beneath her. What is it? The bleach blonde Kunoichi questioned in a disappointed yet breathless fashion. I was just getting started. That's just it. I'm not sure if we should be doing this. It doesn't feel right, Sakura admitted with uncertainty evident in her jade green eyes. It was at those words that Ino's heart sank tremendously. She had her hidden doubts about being together with her best friend in such a manner, but given Sakura's seemingly willful responses, she left them inside to rot. But at that moment, Ino began to fear the worst. Sakura, what are you saying? The turquoise-eyed female questioned with a bit of a shaking and fearful voice. Did I come into it too fast? Did I hurt you in any way? Did I? Ino's words were suddenly broken by a kiss that was as passionate as it was sudden. The blonde's eyes first widened before closing as she enjoyed the short kiss. Sakura parted her lips with Ino and stared at her with a face mixing that of desire, irritation and husky playfulness. Don't ever consider that again. Are you stupid or something? Sakura said before lifting a tender hand to her companion's cheek. I'm just worried about doing it too soon. Despite her now dreamy state, Ino was confused by these words. What's that supposed to mean? If I'm not mistaken, you told me that you and Naruto had already had some fun. So where's the love forehead? She questioned, eagerly awaiting what Sakura had to say in her defense. The pink-haired Kunoichi gave off an unnerving yet jolly tickling smirk before unexpectedly slipping from under Ino's body and trapping her head in between her thighs. Before Ino knew it, she was the one lying on her back with Sakura straddling her face. How's this for love? Sakura teased as her smexy expression never faltered. Now listen up. Naruto and I may have done it, sure, but I also mentioned that I was going to share him with you, remember? Ino's heart lifted even more at being reminded of that fact. Go on, she eagerly pressed on as she inhaled Sakura's intoxicating scent. I just think that maybe it'd be appropriate if we'd wait until Naruto came back. You know, take the edge off with a little action, the female genin cooed in a seductive tremble. I'm listening so far. So what does that mean for us now? Don't even think about telling me that we can't see each other until he gets back, or so help me God I'll. Hey now. Whoever said anything about going that far? I will set the boundaries to keep you in check, so listen well. We can still touch and kiss as long as our lips are the furthest we go, got it? Sakura instructed. Though this was perfect ground for massive disappointment on Ino's part, she found herself smiling at the suggestion, seen as how she was the only one of the two who hadn't forgotten what position they were currently in. Well, If you say so, Ino cooed in an overly innocent tone of voice before clamping an oral grip upon Sakura's G-spot, aka her other lips. Taken by surprise by this gesture, Sakura threw her head back slightly and exhaled a pleasured and raspy grunt before frowning back down at the clever little minx beneath her. Not what I meant, smart ass. Before any more talking could be established, the wily Ino took hold of Sakura's waist and hoisted her own upper body up and causing her friend to land upon her waist. With the eager Yamanaka using her elbows for arch support and Sakura now at eye level, the two females engaged each other in yet another heated display of mouth-slurping affection. Their lips twisted and smeared together, their tongues batted and duelled for control without falter. Finally taking a moment to breath, they both ceased their actions and stared into each other's orbs as they huffed and puffed for their elusive breaths. God, I want you, Ino huskily whispered. As a response, Sakura lifted herself off of her companion, jumped off of the bed and walked to the door with a little more swing to her hips. She turned her head and stared at Ino with her only visible eye. Well then. I guess I get to see how long you can wait, huh? The pink-haired temptress cooed before exiting her room and leaving a flustered and amazingly turned-on Ino to bask in the cesspool of her unfulfilled desires. A fuming Anko Mitarashi and a reluctant but cool-headed Kurenai Yuhi were standing before the council of elders as they made many fruitless attempts to convince them of something that Anko had deemed very important. I beseech you all to reconsider this. How long do you think we can just keep them all in the dark like this? Even though he is our greatest and sworn enemy, Kuro Karatsune is a major part in the younger generation's history. Plus, if we let them in on what we're hiding, then it may give them a drive and a motivation to pick up on their training, Anko tried to convince. Though they all knew that the wily woman's heart was set in the right place, the council had other plans regarding the future of the younger generation, and fighting a genocidal freak like Kuro was definitely not that. Anko. These genin would be chunin are too inexperienced to deal with such a menace, and you know this. It is best that we leave the fighting to those who have survived his previous invasion 20 years ago. One of them being yourself, Anko, Homura Mitokado suggested. The purple-haired Kunoiki could not accept this notion, but that's just it. Even after all these years I'm still no match for that monster. Before Oto's invasion, I had my shot at him, but his powers were still vastly superior to my own and he wasn't even trying. She tried to protest despite her still bruised pride on that particular matter. Then may that be a lesson to you, Anko. If and when Kuro reappears within this village, you will work with your Jonin colleagues as a team to quell this threat, Koharu Utatane said. This time, Anko was starting to get infuriated. What kind of bullsh, was all she could get out before a nervous Kurenai slapped her hands upon her friend's running mouth. Oh my, would ya look at the time. It looks like we should get out of your hair. Thank you for your time, Kurenai humbly said before bowing to the elders and taking Anko by the head and forcing her to do the same as she continued to scream her muffed rants. Feeling the need to get Anko out of there as soon as possible, the genjutsu specialist proceeded to drag her out of the area before she was finally able to free her mouth from her hand. We have to tell them, damn it. We'll make things easier for Kuro if we don't prepare every GENIN and CHUUNIN we have. If you continue to neglect these problems, you'll destroy us all in the PROSSESS. Do you hear me? Destroy us all. ... It was at those last rants that Kurenai was glad that she decided to come. Dango stand. Those thing idiots. Freaking Grupo Festa and ball sacks and sloppy CS, the lot of M. I don't understand why we still have to listen to those RS in the first place if they can't see the facts right in front of them. Anko raged on as Kurenai silently enjoyed a hot cup of tea next to her. To say that Anko was frustrated wouldn't even come close to how she was feeling at that moment. Ever since her defeat and near death by the hands of Kuro, she was using every ounce of her willpower to keep quiet about, respecting the wishes of the council to keep it under wraps until soon it arrived. From a logical standpoint, that seemed to be very plausible, but given that Anko was a naturally illogical person, it seemed pretty pointless. The council wouldn't do this if it weren't for the best interest of people, Anko. What they're doing is actually very smart. I mean, the last thing we need at a time like this is a widespread panic, right? The raven-haired Jonin suggested. Abiki told me the same thing. It seemed okay to me at first, but after having to actually fight him it just. The people need to know, Kurenai. They have a right to know. Keeping it from them like this is just. Anko trailed off. Kurenai set her cup of tea down upon and grew serious. You think I'm not scared too, Anko? She admitted out of the blue. What? The special Jonan responded in slight shock. I never imagined that he would come back, not even by a long shot. Yet here we are, fretting over how we're going to stop him now. To be honest, I don't know what the right choice is. I truly don't, Kurenai said. Anko was simply dumbfounded as she stared at her fellow ninja. She was usually always the calm and collected type, pretty much the polar opposite of herself, but now she was admitting that she was genuinely scared. But of course, Anko began to consider why she was scared. After all, she did have 3 students to look after, students that she had grown quite addicted, so to speak. Here she was thinking that she was the only one who was considering the grim possibilities, and now it was all thrown back into her face with a large serving of shame. Anko sighed heavily. I'm sorry, Kurenai. I guess I kinda lost it back there, she said with a bit of a downcasted look. The said woman merely smiled and resumed sipping at her tea. I don't blame you. After all, I'm not the one who fought him, she said. It was at that moment that the owner of the stand came about to take their orders. Ah, and what can I get you ladies, Toda? Dango. Now, Anko roared. Deep within Hai no Kuni, the intensely focused Nekoshi was standing upon a tall cliff as he peered deeply into the distance of the horizon. Though his arms were crossed, giving him a seemingly calm appearance, he was actually trembling with anticipation. The battle has begun, he said in a low and wondering voice. Looks like Kuro-sensei will finally get the chance he had been waiting for. He knew that the battle between all 3 Sannin would be that of Tans, but to actually feel the increasing force and magnitude of it all from where he was blowing his mind. Yet at the same time, he was heavily enjoying it, and even entertained the thought of going against his sensei's wishes and joining the fight. So for the first time in years, the free-spirited Nekoshi was at a crossroads with himself. Breaking him from his train of thought was the white-haired veteran's senses going crazy for some reason. This strange phenomena sent Nekoshi through a rush that he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't extreme, but it was extremely familiar. He snapped his vision below and began to frantically scan the area. You're kidding me, he whispered as he spotted a speeding female dressed in a black kimono and being followed by a small pig. You have seriously got to be kidding me. With that, the Akatsuki warrior leaped off of the cliff and fell into hot pursuit of the woman in black. Down below, the said woman was running with all she was worth as her eyes scanned the area. Damn it, I don't see him anywhere, Shizune thought to herself. Tonton, pig, was brought along to help out with her cause as his super sensitive was essential for this kind of thing. After a moment of searching, Tonton abruptly stopped in his tracks and his sniffer started going nuts. Shizune, in turn, stopped and shot the little pig a questioning stare. Tonton, what is it? Did you get something? She asked in the hopes that he may have caught Naruto's scent. However, Tonton's sudden and apparent uneasiness shook that notion a little, as he began shaking and frowning. Therefore, Shizune knew that her little companion didn't recognize the scent. In no time at all, she too felt the presence and immediately fell into a fighting stance. Well, it's been a long time. Shinzune, a dark voice echoed out from behind in a low treble. Hearing his voice immediately threw Shizune into a state of awe and shock. Her eyes widened and her stance almost immediately crumbled. Her mouth hung open as she stared ahead of her. Why you? It can't be, she stammered as she gawked, slowly turning around to confirm her suspicions. What's wrong, baby? Aren't you happy? See good old Neko, the messy-haired man said, or am I still from being ked in action 14 years ago or whatever in the hell they told you? Shizune's hands began to tremble. Nekoshi. You're alive. But how? Where have you been? Gasp, she exclaimed as she made one quick examination of the coat he was wearing. Nekoshi's smile widened even more as he crossed his arms. What is it, Shizune? Does my incredible feat still blow your mind, or is there something on my face? He joked. That coat. Nekoshi, you can't possibly be working with the one you know as Kuro. Well, yeah, actually, I am, Nekoshi admitted with a sense of pride. Shizune's shock-filled expression never changed. But, why? Why what, Shizune? Why did you leave us? How could you side with that beast? Shizune questioned in a sad tone. Nekoshi scoffed as he blew that beast comment off. You, along with every living soul on this entire planet, will come to know the meaning soon enough. Sensei's ambition will be realized, and I will do everything I can to serve and protect him, he adamantly stated. Hearing such insanity nearly threw Shizune through a fit of rage. What nonsense are you spitting, Nekoshi? How could you leave everything that you ever loved for such an evil creature? I don't understand, she screamed. The white-haired warrior closed his eyes. Shizune. I didn't intercept you just so I could reminisce about the good old days. I was actually wondering why you were in such a hurry, like you lost something or something, he said. It's no business of a traitor like you, the now enraged Shizune. How dare you show your face to me after the crimes you've committed in the name of that freak? It's Naruto you're looking for, isn't it? Nekoshi asked as though he didn't hear his old acquaintance. Shizune's face slightly flinched. Just as I thought. I'll let you go this time, but I will leave you this one and only warning, Shizune, the black-eyed man said before vanishing out of sight. Stay out of our way, and forget about Naruto. After today, everything you have ever known will be but a distant memory, and change will stream through all of your lives with the force of the heavens. At these words, the brunette Jonan was left with a questioning expression as she stared into the sky, wondering what he meant. That is, of course, until she realized why Naruto wasn't in the same spot that he was left unconscious last night. Once that thought came into play, the gears in her head started grinding. Oh no, don't tell me he went looking for Kuro, Shizune yelled before her and Tonton sped off to an unknown destination. The face of Tsunade was repeatedly slammed against the stone-cold edge of a sturdy rock by a crazy-eyed Kuro. Using her arm to halt this relentless pounding, the blonde woman pushed herself off of the ground, bashing the back of her head into Kuro's face in the process. With an angry roar, the red-haired monster stumbled back before Tsunade caught the side of his head with a devastating roundhouse kick that sent him spinning straight into Jiraiya's line of fire. Smiling with anticipation, the white-haired toad sage lifted his foot high into the air and dropped all of his weight and a sum of his chakra into a heel drop and that connected with Kuro's sternum, forcefully implanting him into the ground. After Jiraiya leaped back, a whole mess of snake burst from the ground and coiled around Kuro. What the hell is the Graal? He roared as he was skewered by hundreds of small blades erected from the ground he was bound to. Orochimaru appeared beside him with his sword ready. Even how Kuro was lying motionless in a pool of his own blood, the Sannin learned long ago never to assume anything by it. Case in point would be his body melting into a red liquid. Substitution, they simultaneously hollered before a smiling Kuro appeared right behind Jiraiya. Although his senses almost immediately picked up on this danger, Jiraiya's body wasn't able to react quick enough, and as a result, his lower back received a swift, rock-hard knee that hurled his bent fur into the air. Reacting instantly, Tsunade ran like a madwoman at Kuro as Orochimaru performed many hand seals. Seeing a familiar blonde charging at him, Kuro caught the still airborne Jiraiya by the back of his head, spun him full circle and chucked him at Tsunade, who simply strafed to the side and resumed her charge. Preparing to deal one of her famous super punches, she reeled her arm back and tightened her fist with knuckle-cracking force. Kuro smiled deviously as he opted to let Tsunade just hit him, but as she advanced ever so close, he suddenly reconsidered and leaned his head back, dodging the massive punch in the time it took to blink. Time was slow for Kuro at that instant as he stared in shock at Tsunade's fist. He was well aware of her attacks and the damage they could do from the beginning. Thing is, when Kuro fought her the first time, she was still developing it. Back then, it would have been child's play, but now if he allowed himself to be hit with that kind of force without being prepared, he'd lose his head, literally. Well, I'm glad I reconsidered, Kuro thought to himself before time snapped back to normal speed. Putting his dodge to good use, the Akatsuki warrior reeled his own arm back and quickly dealt Tsunade a body-numbing blow to the gut, making her choke out in pain. Wasting no time, Kuro snatched her by the hair with both hands and viciously collided her face with his knee. Sensing a sudden rise in chakra, Kuro smirked before waving his hand behind him, causing a sudden torrent of searing acid to splash upon a transparent force field. Immediately, Kuro used his energy to push the force field out and send the acid back at the attacker. Orochimaru cursed and avoided his own assault. Kuro turned back to Tsunade only to see that she was totally gone. With a twitch to his eye, the black-hearted cannibal snapped his head upward and saw both her and Jiraiya diagonally plummeting towards him with flying kicks raised. Kuro opened his arm span and caught both kicks with apparent ease before spinning them both and hurling them away, where they landed on either side of the smiling snake Sannon. From there, a stare down commenced, then, chuckling. Kuro's heartbeat was absolutely unstoppable at that moment. His blood was pumping with excitement and the desire for death and revenge. His chuckling soon turned into that of evil laughter. Since all three of the Sannon were feeling nearly the same drive, despite the danger of the situation, they all smiled widely. After a few moments, Kuro stopped laughing but kept a sickening and twisted smile on his face as he fluently fell into a fully patterned and disciplined fighting stance. So my old friends, I hope you're finished warming up, he gurgled deeply as his body oozed with his dark aura. Tsunade took of her jacket and carelessly discarded it. Funny you should ask that, Kuro, she said. Jiraiya slapped the palm of his hand to the ground and summoned a sturdy red pole. "'Cause we were about to ask you the same thing," he concurred before readying his weapon. HMHMHMHMHMHMM. Good, good. I was starting to get bored, Kuro said before dropping his smile. Let the true festivities begin. The Sannon dropped their smiles as well before simultaneously falling into their fighting stances as well. With a roar of might and dominance, Kuro charged at his old foes as they did the same. Konoha Hot Spring. A very proud and smiling Sakura Haruno entered the empty hot tubs wearing nothing but a small towel and lustful glisten to her skin. Why was she proud and smiling, you ask? Well, the way she saw it, that little stunt she pulled on Ino was both hot and open to bragging rights. Sakura was aware that the wild, crazy and most memorable S with Naruto did wonders for her confidence and attitude towards her life, and she really put it to the test with Ino, making her feel like she simply had to have her. With her spirits lifted, the pink-haired female thought it'd be appropriate to reward her slyness with a nice hot bath at the hot spring. So here she was. Sakura removed her little towel and slowly eased herself into the hot water. Once her entire body was within the water and the naturally uncomfortable heat phase passed on, Sakura was finally able to let all of the energy leak into the liquid heaven she was soaking in. From there, she began to reflect on quite a bit of things, beginning with her and her relationship with Naruto. It was all because of him that she was even entertaining the thought of breaking all of her expectations and exceeding her limits through sheer will that she thought she didn't really have. To keep up with Sasuke in her training wasn't something she dreamed of too often before, and now that she had succeeded, she wondered what other incredible things she could do. Before she fully embraced the love she had for Naruto, Sakura was held back by her many setbacks and weaknesses. Though she was able to accept that she still had a long way to go and that she still had lots of weakness to brush off, the jade-eyed Kunoichi merely saw this as another growing experience and made her feel even stronger on the inside, and once again she inwardly thanked her strong Naruto for that strength. God, where would I be without him? She questioned herself. Sakura shifted herself to get more comfortable and slowly lifted one of her soaked knees up to her face and leaned her cheek against it, closing her eyes as she let her mind wander to other topics of importance. Mainly, her other object of affection. Ino. To think. One of the few people that she declared actual hatred for in the past was now a person of whom her relationship extended far beyond the bound of mere friendship. After Ino had kissed her for the first time, something sparked within her, a new sensation of sorts. Not the same kind that she felt when Naruto kissed her, but something more fascinating. Something more exciting and uncharted. Since she had never even fathomed the thought of falling for a member of the same S, Sakura's mind was running leaps and bounds after that moment. Even though she was weirded out by it after their first kiss, Sakura was happy that it was with Ino. After all, it was her that she knew pretty much everything about. So now here she was, wondering how in the hell she got the best of both worlds in the sum of a day, and allowing Ino to share Naruto with her. She first thought that it was a moment of the desire for kink, the thought of having both of them pleasure her at the same time due to her awakened desires. Yet somewhere along the week she had spent with Ino, she pondered a lot more on it until she concluded that her blonde girl was totally right in the past. Sakura was being very selfish. She knew that her natural stubbornness would not allow her to accept the facts at first. She certainly didn't allow the concept of Ino being with Naruto to exist in the first place. It was only after her embrace for the platinum blonde did she understand where she came from with her pinpoint accusations. Now that she desired a much better understanding for Ino, Sakura swallowed most of her pride and finally thought about how it would be if she had Naruto before herself. Now that she knows how much Naruto means to her, the thought of not being able to have him and watching Ino have him all to herself nearly drove her to tears. That is why she decided to allow Ino to experience the joy that she was able to. Besides, what kind of a kinky lover would she be if she didn't? Sakura smiled to herself at that last thought. Oh, there's gonna be one hell of a party waiting for Naruto when he gets back. A few moments after her dirty fantasies entered her thoughts, she sensed the presence of another from behind. Subconsciously, Sakura recognized it, but was so wrapped up in her relaxation and her, fantasies that she didn't bother to think about who it was, and simply assumed that it was Ino, or at least, that's what she was hoping for. Well, if it isn't little Sakura, a more matured feminine voice called out from behind. Sakura snapped her head around only to see none other than a husky Anko Mitarashi standing tall with her hand on her hips and eyeing her with a weird smile. Weird to Sakura at least. That, of course, was the last thing she noticed. The thing that struck her eyes down at first was the body that was wrapped in a towel that seemed far too small to be on a grown woman, thus revealing more of her toned and well-fit form. All in all, it didn't leave much for the imagination. Anko-sensei, Sakura said in a state of confusion, oh wait, you must be here to take a bath. TCH. No, I'm just wrapped in this towel because I wanna strut my ass around the village. Of course I'm here to take a bath, Anko snapped playfully before throwing on a foxy grin that closely resembled Naruto's. You wouldn't mind if I joined you, right? With a mind of their own, Sakura's eyes steadily trailed down Anko's incredible body before they settled upon the shadow that hid her soft spot. Shaking her head twice, Sakura blushed madly and cursed the fact that Anko was standing above her before shaking her head, no, as she found it difficult to speak. At that answer, Anko's smile turned from amused to amused, if you get my meaning. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.